again. And yes, we're going to record this so that if there's anything you missed or anything you want to share with other folks who weren't able to come, you're more than welcome to do so. So we'll put that up on YouTube later and then send it out via email, probably this afternoon. So with that, I will hand it over to Louise.
Good morning. Thank you very much for allowing me to come speak with you. Nice to see a couple people I know and then just a lot of new faces. So I'm Louise Soucy. I'm the owner of Soucy Accounting Services. I provide primarily bookkeeping services, but I do a little bit of consulting and some other work. I've dealt with nonprofits, and I really like small businesses as well. S corps, folks who've started their own shop and are looking for bookkeeping. So I do have a slideshow, so I thought I'd go through that. And I have to tell you, I always have songs in my head. So I've attached songs, no music, but I have attached a song to each slide, just so you know. These are the songs that go in my head while I'm working and thinking about numbers. So share my screen. And so I think everybody can probably see this okay. So a little bit about me. I'm a CPA. I moved to the island in 1994 to take the job as the Vice President of Finance and Support Services at MDI Hospital. Did that for a little bit, but then had 2 young children, and that just became very, very challenging. So I could either do that or I could spend time with my family. So I chose my family. And then I did a few other things, did some consulting and worked. I actually worked at the YMCA as the finance manager part-time while my kids were in school. And I also spent a few years working with a tax accountant. And at that time, what would happen is folks would show up at the end of the year to get their taxes done, and they'd have either their QuickBooks or they'd have their checkbooks, and they had no idea whether they had made money that year. They weren't balancing their accounts. All they knew is they could just look up how much money they had in the bank and they could make decisions on that. And I thought, well, how can you possibly manage your business if you don't know how you're doing? And they were always grateful when I would do the bookkeeping at the end of the year. And I thought, this is a real business opportunity that I can work with these folks who work so hard all year long, but really have no sense of where their finances lie. And so that's how I ended up doing this. And so what I'm hoping today is just to provide a little bit of accounting information, some bookkeeping tips, some things that might help you. I'm not sure exactly where everybody is in their journey with their businesses, but I'm hoping that even if you can just take 1 or 2 things away, that you'll find that helpful. And I noted that if people wanted to ask questions as we go along, I think that would be fine, but I guess I won't see that. So, so maybe if Molly or Eliza, I don't know if you guys can see that, but anyway.
Yeah, Louise, if one pops up, we can shout at you or raise our hand.
All right. Oh, hang on a second. Not just 1 second. Just want to make sure I've got. Okay. So I thought I'd start with just a few best practices, and I'm going to assume that everybody is doing this. But these are things that I see typically, and that will make your business life work, I think, a little bit more smoothly if you can do some of these things. And one of them is dedicated bank accounts. And I think most people do that, but sometimes it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen right away. We're funding our businesses personally. But once you have an EIN, an employer identification number, we really want to have our own bank accounts. And what I've done with some clients is not only do they have a checking account, but sometimes they might have a payroll account where they will move money regularly. And so the payroll comes just out of one account, and they always know that that's funded and they can cover their payroll. And we've done the same thing with sales tax account, where you might have a sales tax savings account, and you put whatever your sales tax liability is. So as you ring up your purchases every day, we move that money over. And that's just it takes a little stress off because you've got that money there and can meet those obligations. The other thing is a dedicated credit card. And this, I see quite a bit where people put things on their personal card because they don't have a dedicated card. And so then they have to go back and capture all those purchases. It's just easier if we can put everything in the business name and move everything there. And I know it seems really simple and straightforward, but this doesn't always happen for various reasons. An accounting system. And I thought I'd just talk about this just for a couple of minutes. And I think this is sometimes a lot of people get really nervous and concerned about this. I will say QuickBooks is the most common one. All but maybe 3 of my clients use QuickBooks. It's fairly easy to use for anyone, which is why it's very popular for small businesses, sole proprietors, single member LLCs. It's fairly easy to use. It can be problematic at times, like any software. I occasionally run into issues with it, but for the most part, it's been really easy to use. They are really pushing people to be online, to use QuickBooks Online versus the desktop version. And I have to say that's very convenient for your accountant because I can access those from wherever I am. If somebody's got QuickBooks Online, I can share it with their tax accountant. But some clients use Excel. I have a couple of clients who use Excel spreadsheets to capture their books, and they have very few transactions. They might have between 5 and 10 transactions a month, and they can capture it in an Excel spreadsheet, and they don't have to purchase QuickBooks. So I would say it really depends on the number of transactions you have. If you have more than 5 or 10 a month, it's unwieldy to try to do it in a spreadsheet or, a piece of paper, whatever.
Oh no, there's that broadband issue. Did we lose Louise?
Louise, can you hear us?
Oh no.
Maybe she'll rejoin. Bear with everybody.
Probably carries. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Don't know what happened.
Looks like you froze up. It could be the instability.
Yeah. So a manual system works, and I showed her how to make sure everything got captured, total everything and keep everything on track. And I remember years ago when I was doing tax returns and I was working with this one client, and he had a small business, and he had, I would say, 4 or 5 employees. And when I was talking with him, I found out that he actually did payroll himself. He actually did payroll, by hand. He wrote checks. He did all the tax submissions. And I said, really, what, there are so many payroll services out there, and they're pretty good, and they're not expensive. And he said, when I started my business 30 years ago, I did it manually, and it's what I do every Saturday morning. I take 2 hours to do my so timely. And anyways, so I do not know why, but so hopefully I won't cut out again. The important thing with the accounting system is you want timely and accurate financial statements. You want to know where you stand financially. Are you making money this year? Are you not? Are you making more than you thought? Can you afford to do something that you need to do? Do you want to hire an employee? Do you need to invest in some other software or something else? And if you don't have timely and accurate financial statements, I think it's really hard to do that because you really have no idea where you stand fiscally. Another best practice, and here is where I sometimes fall, is invoicing clients timely. And this is something I actually talk to clients a lot, particularly provide services. If you have a retail business, that's pretty much real time. But if you're providing a service where you're doing something for someone and you're going to bill them later, invoicing them timely is really important. To keep cash flow flowing and so your client isn't wondering a year later if they're going to get an invoice from you, and then paying bills timely. And there aren't a lot of clients that I send out invoices for, but we do pay bills for clients, and we pay weekly. Some it's every other week is fine, and for others twice a month seems to work. And so it's really like anything else, you just have a schedule and you just say every Friday morning I'm going to write checks, or every Friday morning I'm going to send out invoices. The last item I wanted to note was just there are a lot of legal and corporate issues around having a business, and I'm not going to get into those today because I'm not a lawyer. That's not my background, but a lot of these items are interwoven with financial issues, things like corporate status or your tax status, whether you become an S corp. So I just want to mention that that's, the best practices you're going to have handled a lot of that you've got your tax status set up, and you're, in good financial shape. So I don't know if there are any questions, and hopefully I'm thinking everybody knows this all makes sense to them. A bit of a delay here. Okay. Know why this is. Okay, so important. Taking care of business. I think this is the biggest challenge when you start out, is managing your business. And I know some people, a lot of people just say, well, I'm just too busy working. I can't take care of my business. And so what happens is we end up not having enough cash to pay something. We miss deadlines. We don't make estimated taxes. We run into some issue because we're not busy managing our business. And we have to make it a priority. And it's a challenge for me. I'm a small business. How do I make time? How do I make time to spend with my employee? How do I make time to do strategic planning? How do I go back and do things? And it's really carving that time out. And I'm trying to become better at it myself, but it's a challenge I see for most small businesses. It's a challenge for not-for-profit businesses. None of us are staffed enough, it feels like, to really get everything done. And so you always feel like you're running a little bit behind, but it's just a reminder, we need to make some time to manage our business. Even if it's, once a month, if you can sit back and look at how the month went. I think it's a challenge, but I think it's really important. And one of the things that I found that's really helpful is if you have a team, and I'm hoping that I can put the right amount of emphasis on this, but there should be people helping you support what it is you're doing. And you may have a bookkeeper, you may have a tax accountant that you've been working with, which is great. Ideally, you've got somebody at your bank that you can work with. And I want to say this was really important during early on in the pandemic, when the PPP money became available. And there were a couple of banks on the island, both Bar Harbor Bank and Trust and First National Bank in particular, only because I worked with them the most, did a great job with this. They reached out to their customer base. They helped them, find the PPP loans, get them forgiven. And when I talked to people who weren't working with a small local bank, they were not having that same experience. They were having a really difficult time going through it. And I think, but the bankers here, they're part of your team. And I want to stress that. And it's not taking anything away from Machias or Canton. I just didn't work with them as much, but they are also here on the island. They're local. Your financial people, tax accountants are great. People should, use your tax accountant to ask questions at times. I would make sure before you make like a long appointment with them that you just figure out how much they're going to cost. Because I've had that happen. And like for a 1 hour tax planning, some of them are charging $350. So you want to take that into consideration. But have a team, a group of people that you can talk to, that you can lean on, that you can ask questions about, mentors. I know I hired Emily Delaney last August, and I had a group of people that I talked to about what happens when I hire an employee. Do I hire an independent contractor? What do I do? And I had a mentor that I worked with who helped me work through that. And so I would say, you want a team, you want a group of people that will help you and support you. And I mean, that's part of what I like to think I am for my clients, is I'm part of that team. And early on with some clients, I felt like I provided a lot of counseling as well. Because, as you're going through your business and you've got like all this angst, we sat down and talked through a lot of that together. So I think that's a really important thing, especially if you're a one-person operation. You need some support. A really important thing, looking at your financial information regularly. Of course, I'm an accountant. I'm going to say that, but I think it's really important. Sometimes with some clients, with as many clients as possible, I try to set up regular meetings. If they don't have a board, I will try to set up a meeting with them once a month so they can look at their financials. And for some people, they've been in business for years and had never really looked at them. They had no concept on an ongoing basis. And so for some of these clients now, they can look at their numbers, they understand them a little more, they know what to expect, when they might have had a good month or a bad month, and they can do a little more tax planning earlier in the year. And so I think that's been it's been helpful for especially the established businesses. And then you can use this information to plan. Like I said, you can, the questions that I sometimes get are, can I hire another employee? Can I hire an employee? Should I buy instead of rent a facility? Can I move into a larger place? Can I afford more rent? There are all these types of questions that are very hard to answer if you don't know what your numbers are. So this was a picture of me the last 2 months working through tax stuff and trying to get everybody's 1099s out. Even as late as yesterday, I had a couple people looking for 1099s, and so I was tracking those down. So anyway, a little SOS. So as ideally as we'd all like our businesses to be, we do run into problems, snags, issues along the way. And there are some things that I see more often than others. Some of them you have some control over, and some of them are just difficult. I mean, obviously COVID changed so much of how we all operate. But the problems I've seen the most with my clients, and so anticipating these would be useful, I think. One is not spending any time managing their business. And I've particularly seen that with a couple of clients this past year. And it's the challenge of growing without really finding people to help you grow. And so not being able to find employees. And so, ending up working 60, 70 hours a week, just doing the work, just providing services that your clients need, or keeping your store open. There's nobody else out there. So it becomes really challenging at the end of the day to want to spend any time looking at your business or thinking about your business. I know certainly when I'm busy, I just want to go home and have dinner and not really think about numbers. But let me just be clear, I really love thinking about numbers most of the time, but just even I get my fill occasionally. Invoicing and billing issues, which leads to inaccurate, incomplete, and not timely financial information. And I find that often just because people, you know, they don't, they haven't invoiced their clients, they can't find they can't find bills. And so they don't get entered. So you really have no sense of what's out there. And I see this across all types of businesses too. And sometimes it's just, you know, you've got a period of time where things are a little out of control and everything kind of gets put in a little pile until you can get back to it. And I'm sure that hasn't happened to any of you, but it has happened to a number of my clients over the years. So the next one is like my personal pet peeve, paying for personal items with business funds. And this isn't the accidental, oops, I used my business credit card to pay for dinner out the other night. This is, you know, using your business to help fund your personal life. And again, I'm sure none of you are doing this, but occasionally, you know, I'll be looking at somebody's books and I'll see their children's driver's ed fees, or you might see, you know, you took a trip for business and your partner's expenses are on there too. And I know your partner might be supporting your business, but, you know, technically, unless they really are an employee of the business, their expenses should not be flowing through. And I particularly want to emphasize this because keeping in mind that we set up a business and a corporate entity and an LLC to protect us from liability. And so if you start treating that business like it's your personal, you know, the phrase the lawyers use is piercing the corporate veil. You've now opened that up. You've opened up your personal funds as well. So I just want to remind folks, you know, keep those separate as much as possible and just draw that line. And I know there's a lot of gray and I understand that, but, you know, just draw that line. So. The other problem is just not reconciling their bank accounts or their credit card information. And again, so what happens is I have one client who I just review their books at the end of the year before they send their things off to their tax accountant, and they don't reconcile the bank statement during the year. As I go through, I'll see that some of the stuff they'd invoiced their clients, some of those invoices to their clients didn't get recorded. For some reason, I don't know why. I think they invoiced through QuickBooks, but some of them, perhaps the client, it's a one-off. And so it's like $400 here you go. And then most of their transactions are debit card transactions that when they purchase things, and those don't all get recorded because the person who does the books just you know, it's small little family business. And I always think, well, how do they know if they have enough money? And I think what they do is
Louise, I think we lost you again. When you come back, I wonder if turning off your video might help with the connection, but hopefully we get you back here in a second.
I'm hoping she'll rejoin. If everybody's okay,
Yeah, I
we'll
just tried
give it a
texting
minute.
her because Louise is not.
I am so sorry. All right. I did look to see what happened and I wasn't connected on my office internet, which is much better. I'm not sure why that happened. It should have connected automatically. So
Okay.
I apologize. I
No worries.
apologize. Right on Main Street in Southwest Harbor, I don't usually have any internet issues. And so the last one is software problems. And this That one I can't explain.
Louise, I wonder if you turn off your video, if that would help. I know sometimes that helps.
If
Yeah,
I
we
would.
can-
If you
If you-
turn your video off, that will sometimes help with the connection.
Okay. All right, so let me share my screen and stop my video. Okay, here we go. So in the last one is the software problems, and I have seen this quite a bit. I want to say in the last year, but I feel like it's really ramped up in the last few months. And some of the problems are with QuickBooks, and I don't want to say that, oh, QuickBooks is terrible, don't use it, but it's the syncing issues. Any software that syncs with QuickBooks. Oh, I see some, yeah, I see some heads nodding. It has become more and more problematic. And it's been very frustrating for clients because information then doesn't come over properly, or you just need to spend more time tracking it down. And I want to say, I think this is a problem that we'll probably continue to see. When I talk to IT people, there just aren't enough IT people out there. And so my theory is that if your QuickBooks or your Peachtree or Toast or whoever, you just don't have enough people. And so if you're prioritizing what you're doing, you're looking at keeping hackers out. And so the other stuff, the code that you change is affecting how you sync with software. And I've seen more and more issues with this. For many of our QuickBooks Online clients, we sync with the bank, and those syncs are constantly falling apart, and we have to reset them up. But also for a number of clients, I end up spending a fair amount of time in their industry specific software, like Toast, for instance, or Lightspeed, and those products are also having a more and more difficult time. I have one client who is a retail client, and she uses Shopify a lot. And her software was syncing with Shopify and then suddenly stopped last September. And her software, she uses a different accounting package, and her software also wasn't syncing properly with the bank. And she keeps asking them, she says she's been reaching out to them like every day for a couple of months now. And they keep sending her little emails saying, we haven't heard from you, so we're closing this case. And then she has to reach back out and say, no, it's not solved yet. So I just want to say this is an issue that many people are dealing with, and it's very frustrating because it can take a large amount of your time. And all we can do is try to work through it, use your accountant to help you as much as possible. But I have been seeing a lot of problems with this. So, and obviously I'm having some internet issues of my own. So, but anyway, so one of the things was what's the bare minimum you need to do? Okay, so you've got all this going on, and I don't have time to deal with it all. I just need to be able to get through the day. I think one of the big ones to me is that dedicated bank account, and don't commingle it with personal spending. It's huge. Just put it all, at least to have it all go through that bank account. And that way at the end of the year, your tax accountant can see what's there, or if you're a nonprofit and you're going to have a 990, everything's in one place. And don't have your personal spending going through it as much as possible. If you have if you've paid for some business expenses personally, reimburse yourself, and try to reimburse yourself on a regular basis. Which I should note also, I do with mileage. So what I like to do, because I don't do a lot of driving, certainly not anymore, because we can do everything remotely, is I reimburse based on mileage. I just use the IRS rate, and that's what we do. But obviously, if your car is an integral part of your business, if you're a contractor and you're driving around everywhere, you're going to have your car as an item in your tax return. And so you got to track your mileage, and you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck that way if you claim it as a listed asset. Reconcile your bank accounts regularly, so that at least when you, if you're using your accounting system, what you've got, how much money you really have, what's outstanding, in case you've written a big check. You don't see that when you go online to look at your bank account, but if you're tracking things in your accounting software, you're going to see that. And then hire expertise when you need it. You know, if you're the only person running your business and you're running around 70 hours a week, it's time to look at hiring some help. Primarily an employee. It might be an independent contractor, but keeping in mind an independent contractor, is not an employee. It's somebody you're just hiring for a specific job typically. If it's somebody who's going to work for you on a regular basis and they're showing up and you're saying, here you go, I'm providing you all the materials. Here's how you're going to do your work, and you're going to be here every day from 8 to 5. That person's an employee. But hire expertise, and it could be, you need to do your website and you think you want to do it yourself, but you've been trying to do it for 6 months now, and you think, let's just hire somebody to do it. Keep in mind, there are a lot of people out there who can do this for you. There are people on the island, there are people nearby, but you can even go online and look. There are so many independent contractors out there doing this remotely, but don't be afraid to hire some help. Figure out where that is, where that needs to be. And I was talking to somebody who it was about setting up their S corp, or I think it was a single member LLC, and they were going to do it themselves. But the reality is, for $500, $600, you can pay a lawyer to do it for you, and you don't have to read through any of the documents, make sure you got everything filled in. Some expenses are just worth it. So. And then the last one, any questions? It's been a quiet group, and maybe I've told you things you all know and are all doing. And if that's the case, then great, that's fabulous. But all right, so if you do think of a question, I did put my email in there. If you just want to reach out and go, hey, you mentioned this and I didn't understand what you meant, I'm happy to answer any of those emails. I want to note that I am part of a group, the Down East Business Association, DBA. We meet Friday mornings at 7:45, and we meet online, which is how I met Catherine Emery. And it's about 45-minute meeting typically, unless somebody wants to just talk, stay on a little longer and talk for 45 minutes. And typically we really just do a check-in, how our week went, how things are going. And then if we want to talk about some topic in a little more detail. And I will say it was helpful for me last summer. There were a number of us talking about hiring independent contractors versus employees. And we were able to really talk about that, flesh it out a little bit. And one person was looking at 2 different employees to hire and which one was the best fit. And really having that sounding board has been really helpful for, I think, those of us in that group. So again, if you're interested in that, want any more information, please reach out to me, or you can reach out to Catherine Emery or a few other folks. So in any case, I wanted to throw that out as another option if you just need like a group to lean on. Oh, that makes me think of another song, but that'll be for the next presentation. So, all right, I do see some items in the chat. Yep, no questions though. So, well, hopefully I answered all your questions. My video back up. But if there's, like I said, if there's anything you think about, or if you want more details about anything or things that you wish I'd covered.
I have a question, Louise.
Oh, yeah.
Catherine.
Yeah, hi, Catherine.
You included the photo of you saying right now as you're preparing for taxes. And I guess I'm wondering, in the course of your year as a small business working with an accountant, what is the best time to send you work or to reach out to say, oh, I need you to do my, are there are periods that I know friends who are accountants are absolutely slammed. And so as a small business, I'd love to know when I reach out to people, what should my timeline be so that I'm not reaching out and adding to stress does that make, I'm,
Yep.
and also the odds of somebody getting back to me and saying, yes, I can work with you.
Yeah. So, so what I would say, like if you're an S corp or a partnership, your tax returns are due March 15. And, the tax accountants are ready to start doing those in January. And so ideally, which is the other advantage of if you're keeping tabs on your bank accounts and you're reconciling things throughout the year, at the end of the year, it should be fairly quick. And there are tax accountants out there. Sometimes they'll give a discount if you give them your information by, say, the end of January, because they want to have that stuff as early as possible. The last thing they want is somebody showing up on March 1st saying, hey, can you do my taxes for the deadline? So I had one person once who asked me that. It was like March 10th, and they go, oh, I'm about to go to Europe. Would you be able to do my taxes before I go? And I couldn't believe, first of all, that the person had the gall to ask. I'm like, I said, oh, I'm sorry. You'll have to be on a waiting list. But I don't do taxes anymore myself, but I do prepare a lot of books for the tax accountant. So I go back and forth with tax accountants quite a bit. So, but yeah, I would say the sooner you can get stuff to them, the better. And then if you're looking for a tax accountant, then, use that time in the summer and fall to reach out to them. Because that's when a lot of them are, time's a little low. You have to think about their cycle. So March 15th is for business returns. April 15th are the personal returns. So they've got sort of that blip to March 15th, and then they've got that last ramp up for personal. And then a lot of them will take a little bit of time off. And then if they extended your business return, that's due September 15th. And then the personal returns get extended to October 15th. So again, it gets busy then. And what typically happens is people with more complicated situations, you've got investments, you've got, you got stuff like that going on. So it just takes a while to gather all the information. And but yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, I think.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of the cycle of an accountant. So that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. The sooner you can get their stuff to them. And so what I try to do is gather. So for us, what happens is we get really, really busy then at the end of the year trying to close books and get everything reconciled, because often you don't have all the information to enter until, a couple weeks into January. So it gives us a quick period of time.
Thank you.
Oh, good questions. Okay, so I've used QuickBooks for 3 different companies and all have set up things differently. Yep. And this is actually a challenge that we have sometimes too. How to record income and expenses, what's an expenditure versus a bill, and if I'm just writing a check, do I need to enter an expenditure? So this is such a great question because Emily and I talk about this sometimes. I personally love the very theoretical model of entering bills as bills. And the reason why is because you can attach that invoice number to it. And you can say, this bill is for, electricity in January, or this is invoice number 12345 from the paper company. And so I like the entering of the bill that way because I've got the detail. But on the other hand, like a lot of people do auto pay and bill pay and everything gets paid online. So you can just enter it as an expenditure, but then you just want to make sure you've captured all that information. Because one of the things you probably are all seeing is that, especially if you use bill pay or you're actually mailing a check, sometimes things get lost or they take so long to get there and you get invoiced again, or you get a statement and they haven't received that payment. And I don't want to be paying it twice. And so that's why I like that level of detail. Does that make sense for that question, Lauren?
It does. But I end up sometimes with one company putting it in the description.
Yeah.
And I know it's not as seamless, but
yeah,
I'm just wondering if I need to do those 2 steps. And I see your point.
Is it mostly auto pay and bill pay?
Some of them are actual checks that I'm handwriting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, your handwriting. Yeah, you're
Mhm.
not using QuickBooks to print the checks.
Right,
Okay.
right, for some of the smaller places, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we could, we can even talk about this a little more on offline if
Okay.
you want to talk about it a little bit more. But like I said, I do prefer the bill. You can do it either way.
Mhm.
Just make sure that you've got all the detail in there. So if you have to go back, because that's always my issue is if I have to go back and look at this later, will I know what I did? Will I know what this is?
But
Right?
as an accountant, you don't need that level of detail, or do you?
I like the level of detail. I don't necessarily need it. What
Okay.
I do like is if I'm going to print a report, like maybe a transaction report for the client, and it's got all that information, it's nice for them to see what they paid for. Oh yeah, I bought a lot of toner, or I bought, 1,000 envelopes.
Okay.
So for them to have that detail is nice. And then the other question was, with a nonprofit, would you list a donor as a customer? Yes, I think so. If you're using your QuickBooks for your donor base, yeah, I would. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not as great as donor software, which is the other software that also interfaces is that donor software. I have seen, we do have one client that uses Donor Perfect in QuickBooks Online, and that seems to work really well. That one's one that I don't think we've had any issues with.
Okay.
Anyway,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Louise, since you have recommended that people assemble a team, could you give some insight into what people should budget for assembling a team?
Oh, yeah. So, well, it depends on who your team is. I mean, first of all, you should have your banker. I mean, maybe you don't have,
They should be free.
they should be free.
Okay.
Right. Well, free, yes, and so that's really helpful if you've got loans, but also just, sometimes you just want a line of credit, or, you want to be able to, make your banking life easier, right? I mean, this is all about making the other stuff easier so you can do your job. So the banking stuff should be free. For an accountant, I mean, it depends. Like if you're, you're going to do a tax return, you're probably going to spend $1,000 a year. So I would say I'm going to say on average. But if you want to have a little, let's say you want to meet with let's say you have an S Corp, so you have a taxable entity, and then that person, the tax accountant might also do your personal stuff. You might want to have another session with them in the middle of the year to talk things through a little bit. And certainly as some of us get closer to retirement age, you've got all those financial issues to think about. And a tax accountant is a really good person to talk with, because they know about retirement plans, they know about investments, and I wouldn't necessarily go with all that they recommend, but at least they can provide you with options. So you might want to put aside a little money for that. The legal thing, once you get past setting up your business, there's not as much stuff. And so that's really going to be up to you, is if you've got, if you've got issues that might come up that you need to have addressed. Most of my clients don't have a whole lot of legal issues. What might happen is they might want to hire an employee, they might have non-competes. And so then you're going to start spending a little bit of money, and lawyers cost a lot. It's hard to get out of a meeting with them under, a few $100s anyway. So unless you've got like some great I was going to say, unless you want to barter something, but you've got to report all that stuff anyway, but we can talk about that later. And then the other thing is IT, your computers, and a lot of people want to do that themselves, but I will tell you, I feel I'm pretty IT savvy. I know it doesn't look like it this morning, but I feel pretty IT savvy, and I still hire somebody to do it. I don't want to be taking that chance. I have them, if I get a new laptop, they set it up for me. They put all the stuff on there, the antivirus, the backup, they do all of that stuff. They take care of my network. And that can be, $1,000 or $2,000 a year, depending on how much of their services you need. But if we're all fairly dependent on technology, and when you need it, you need it. So. I mean, if my computer goes down, I'm just, although I will say, I'm just going to say, last week, Spectrum had to come check our internet. There was something wrong with our internet and cable. And so they were here like Wednesday at 3, and I couldn't work on my computer for the most part. I couldn't check emails. I couldn't do anything for about 3 hours. And I mean, some of you would have said, well, then go for a walk, but I kept working. But what I did was I cleaned my desk. I worked on scheduling. It was so freeing to not have that computer like talking to me, emails pinging. But anyway, for what it's worth. Does that answer your question, Kathy?
Yes, but if you were to engage a bookkeeper on a regular monthly basis,
Oh,
for
yeah.
instance, what should someone budget for that?
It all depends on how many hours. I charge $60 an hour. And I think there could be bookkeepers that charge less. If you just had some, let's just say you said, oh, I am not going to reconcile my bank account. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. And you have a fairly small business, it's going to take maybe 2 or 3 hours a month assuming everything's good, for somebody to just come in and reconcile for you. It's really, I mean, Emily, wouldn't you say like 2 or 3 hours a month if things are all in there? Yeah. Yeah. And so you can decide, oh, I would prioritize that over, other things. So like me in the IT, like some people might get, oh no, I love doing IT stuff, or I love doing my website. I want to do my website. But I have a client who hires somebody to do their blog and their website, and she pays quite a bit of money. She pays several $1,000s a year for it, but it's beautiful. I mean, it probably cost quite a bit to set it up in the first place, but it's beautiful, and it's a really important part of her business. So, because she needs to keep it updated and fresh, and there are a lot of links in there. So it all depends on how much you want to invest in something like that, and how important it is to your business. It's like anything else, you're just going to balance it. Well, I think that's it. Thank you all very much. I'm hoping you got something out of that. And
Thank you, Louise.
Oh, thanks. And if you think of something else, like I said, just reach out and shoot me an email.
Awesome. I popped your email in the chat and your website as well. And we just want to thank you so much for showing up, and the great slides and the soundtrack. Now all those songs are stuck in my head. Love it. And thank you all for joining too. And we will follow up with the recording, the slides, if Louise is okay with that. And then we also have plans to do a happy hour in April, just to thank everybody for participating in the series and wish you all a happy season upcoming. And then also hopefully to gather a little bit of feedback on this series, what worked, what didn't, what you might want to see next winter, that kind of thing. So more info to come, and thank you all so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Bo.
Thank you.
Bye.